Most of the time, when we release our application, we want our database to be in a particular shape with some data. This is called database migration. Now, in this backend project, I'm using a database migration tool called Migrate Mongo. So if you look at package.json over here under dev dependencies, you can see we have a dependency to this package, Migrate Mongo. We have a similar tool in other development stacks. For example, in .NET, we have Entity Framework. In Django, we also have database migrations and so on. So you should probably be familiar with these migration tools. But if not, let me give you a 2-minute summary on how they work. So using these migration tools, we can create database migration scripts. In this project, our migration scripts are stored in this migrations folder. So currently we have one script. This is just a basic JavaScript file. In each file, we have two functions, up for upgrading the database and down for downgrading it. So in the up function, we're going to the movies collection and inserting these movie objects. And obviously, when downgrading the database, we're going to remove these movies. Okay, again, don't worry about the JavaScript code. Think about the concept. So we have one script, which is called populate movies. And as you can see, it's timestamped. Now, using a tool like Migrate Mongo, we can go to the terminal and say Migrate Mongo up. This will look at our migrations folder and execute all migration scripts. Now, what if we execute this command multiple times? Well, our scripts are not going to be executed twice. Because if you look at our database, look, here we have a collection called changelog. In this collection, we have the scripts that have been executed. So Migrate Mongo will not execute a script multiple times, okay? Now, back to package.json. In the script section, we have these commands, which are aliases for the command in front of them. So here we have db-up, which is mapped to Migrate Mongo up. So here in the terminal, we can say Migrate Mongo up, or we can say npm run db up. With npm run, we can run any of the commands in package.json, okay? Again, if you don't use Node or npm, you have a similar concept in your development stack, okay? So that's the idea of migration tools. Now, how can we execute the database migration as part of starting our application? Well, let's look at our Docker file in the backend project. So here's our Docker file. We talked about this before. We simply call npm start, and this will start our web server. Now, in our compose file, we can overwrite the command that we have here and do something else. So let's bring up our Docker compose file. Here's the definition of our API service. We can add a new property here, command. And here we can overwrite the default command in our Docker file. So here we can say migrate Mongo up and npm start. Now there's a problem here. It is possible that our database server is not ready at the time of executing this command. So even though our database container might be running, the actual database engine, in this case Mongo, may not be ready because starting a database engine often takes several seconds. This is where we use a waiting script. So if you search for Docker wait for container on this page, which is part of Docker documentation, you can find a list of tools that give you that capability. So we have wait for it, Dockerize, shell compatible, wait for, as well as relay and containers. And of course, there is more. I've played with these tools, and the one that has worked for me personally is wait for it. If you look at this, this is just a GitHub repository and includes a shell script, waitforit.sh. With this script, we can wait for our database engine or any other processes to get ready before doing some work. So back to our Docker file, before migrating our database, we want to use our wait for script. Now, if you look at our project, you can see I've stored the wait for script here inside the backend folder. So here we can say wait for, then we specify the name of our computer or host, which is DB. That is the name of our container, right? Now we want to wait for port 27017 to receive traffic. That is the default MongoDB port, right? Once this is ready, then we're going to migrate Mongo. Now, as you can see, this command is a little bit too long, so there's another way to achieve the same result. we can create an entry point script. So once again, in this project, I've supplied a file called docker-entrypoint.shell. This is a basic shell script. So first we echo a message saying, waiting for MongoDB to start. And this is where we're using the wait for script. Now that Mongo is up and running, we print a message saying we're migrating the database, so npm run db up, and finally we start our web server. Now, we can go to our compose file and simplify this command. All we have to do is run our Docker entry point script. Now, this is for Linux. If you're on Windows, you can write the PowerShell script to do the same thing, okay? So this is how we can migrate the database. Now, to verify this is working, let's go back to the terminal, stop this process. Now I'm going to bring down the application. So this has removed our containers like API, DB, and web, as well as our network. But our volume is not deleted. So Docker Compose doesn't automatically delete the volume in case we have some data we don't want to lose. So let's look at all our volumes. All right, here we have vidly, underline vidly. So the first vidly represents our application, and the second vidly is the name of our volume, okay? So let's go ahead and remove this volume, vidly, underline vidly. Good. So now our MongoDB database is gone. So now let's restart the application and see if we get a fresh MongoDB database populated with our movies. So Docker Compose up. Let's pray that everything is going to work. All right, I think we're almost ready. Okay, so back to the browser. We can go to localhost port 3001/API/movies. That's our endpoint. Beautiful. So all these movies are here. We can also access our front-end application at port 3000. Refresh. Beautiful. So our migration is working perfectly. Next, we're going to talk about running tests.